Hello and welcome to a very special City Voices interview with Emeline Lambert.
Hello. Let's pretend we've not been speaking for the past 5 minutes.
Emeline was an actress. She has appeared in television series Django and Invasion and played Alyssa Targaryen, the tragic mother of one of the show leads, Daemon Targaryen, in the second season of House of the Dragon. After a series of spiritually transformative experiences, Emeline has discovered her true being and has quit acting in favor of having quiet moments of deep peace. She volunteers for City Voices, helping folks to cope with their inner and outer challenges while waiting patiently and lovingly for signs of how to direct her future life. How does that make you feel?
um, it makes me feel like it's a story.
Story, yes. And
We all
what is the problem with stories?
it's not a problem. There is no problem with stories as long as you don't believe it to be the reality of your existence. It's a story. This is the story
Ah,
of me, you know.
right. Well, hopefully the questions I ask you will be less about the story and more about experience.
But the two are connected as well, if I may just add. So um it's all one big sort of unraveling, but um your relationship with your own story, that the person that you are changes when you sort of discover what lies behind it. And then it just sounds like someone else's life, not in a way that is pejorative or categorical or emotionally withdrawn or in some sort of emotional denial. It's just you know this to be the shallowest, most superficial, most immaterial part of you. This is not who you are. This is just the avatar in the video game. So it just makes me laugh because I think you wrote a wonderful story. I just hear it and I just don't. But yeah, sorry. Carry on.
All right, let's carry on. So you quit acting because it is not in alignment with your soul. Are there any roles that could be in alignment? Like what would it have to look like if there was a role that came to your desk and you were like, "Oh, okay, this is possible."
um, all right. Well, first of all, I didn't quit acting because it didn't align with my true nature. It happened. Something, an event, um, a moment of profound realization just took place. And I had to then make a choice of, do I alchemize, understand, and believe in this profound moment that I feel in my being is real? And therefore, do I rearrange things in my life that don't fit the quality and the truth of what this moment has brought me? Or do I put it in a back drawer somewhere and decide to ignore it because I want to hold on to this life that I have, and this story of me and this version of myself that I've created for myself that is navigating the world, and I don't want to let go of that. And so it was never a rational decision where I sat down and thought, oh, this is not working out. What should I do? Should I quit? Yes, I should. The process was not intellectual. It was just purely experiential. So I never felt like I was left with a choice. I just knew that I had to stop if I wanted to actually encounter um, a truer, more aware presence within. So yes, and to answer your second question, um, I mean, if someone sends me a script where I have to sit and meditate with closed eyes and I get paid for it, then lovely, you know. But I so much of acting is just really truly believing that you are this person with this set of experiences and this lived past, present, and future, and that you are existing energetically on a vibrational level in this specific situation. And it requires an enormous amount of um, you know, uncrooking the axis upon which you exist, and the sort of the resting as awareness within, and being in that specific alignment to put yourself into the being of someone else. And it's often quite harmful. And when I mean harmful, I don't mean dangerous, but it takes, you know, I did a scene in Django where I was losing a baby in the canyon, and we did it for about 3.5 hours. That's not energetic alignment, far from it. You know, it takes a lot out of you. So I don't know if I would want to move out of this incredible flow of peace that I feel at the minute, to put my body and mind in such a sort of experiential state that it's a real choice.
What if they asked you to play the Buddha?
I'd be like, no, I can't do that. It would be an insult to his
An
memory.
insult?
I am not a Buddha. I'm not enlightened.
Aren't we all Buddhas?
We're all Buddhas in nature. We all possess a Buddha nature, yes. Uh, Most of us are asleep, and unaware of our Buddha nature. But yes, no, I think Eckhart Tolle should play the Buddha, and I can play one of his disciples. I would be happy with that.
Oh, wasn't there who was a disciple of note, Nagana or something? Do you recall his? Okay, well,
No.
let's move quite along then. Shall we continue?
Yes.
Are you conscious when you are asleep now?
We would have to rephrase that question. So when we fall, we are not conscious. We are consciousness. We are consciousness. We are pure awareness. That is our true nature. And when we fall asleep, we fall below thinking. So we don't rise above thinking, which would happen in a state of, for instance, real samadhi, real concentration in a meditation experience, where you are not thinking in your pure consciousness, because you've risen above the perceptions and expressions of thoughts. When we fall asleep, we fall below thinking, but the consciousness that we are is still there, fully expressed. It's just that obviously our brainwave patterns go from, you know, alpha, beta, gamma, theta. I mean, not gamma, they go into theta essentially. But we
Then
felt,
what is I'm sorry.
yes.
What is your experience of sleep and deep sleep now that you're more attuned than before when you were distracted before all this happened?
I think the real interesting thing happens when you are in the process of falling asleep. When you're in this sort of twilight zone in between the two worlds, you know, there is a real it's hard to describe, but it's a real magical space where you can feel yourself falling asleep, but you're quite present there, and consciousness is still completely sort of embedded within your experience. And so because you a part of you is drifting off, and because you're the nature and the quality of your brain waves are changing, you enter the zone of complete sort of bliss, like surfing a wave, where everything quiets down in a completely different and new way. But that's just a really, really tight window of understanding, because it's right before the cusp of sleep, essentially. Other than that, I would just say that don't dream much anymore. I used to be a vivid, and I don't really know what that means actually. I don't have the science to back it up, but I used to be a vivid dreamer, and I don't dream much. And then what's really interesting as well, actually, even more than falling asleep, is, and that is something that I find incredible, is the moment when you wake up and there's just the shortest slither of time where you wake up, your body wakes up, so the eyes open, and there is this very short instant where you don't know who you are, where you are, what happened the day before, the plans, the meetings, whatever you have to do today, and you are suspended in this very narrow bubble of time where you are just pure being. And then, like everyone knows, the mind jumps back in. Oh yes, my name is Stan Frey. I'm in New York, and today I need to do this. Yes. Okay, the phone, the emails. But there is just this elevation that happens when you're rising from sleep and when thoughts have not come in yet, where I believe we are the most in contact with the purity of this awareness that we are, without anything added onto it, just pure awareness. And we get a very clear window of that at the moment at which we wake up.
You experience pure awareness more often than that, right?
Me,
Yeah, you.
yes.
And you enjoy being alone and simply being, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, do you believe in spirit guides or guardian angels?
Yes, I do, because I believe that most of the things that exist are things we can't perceive, that exist and transcend the realm of the 3D anyway. We've been given 5 very clear entry doors to experience reality, which are the 5 senses, plus consciousness, which could be considered the 6th sense, but to be clear, 5 senses. And so everything that we perceive, we only perceive because it vibrates at a lower speed than the speed of light. We don't see the waves of the microwave, right? But there are microwaves that are warming your food, but we don't see them because they're quicker than the speed of light. So much of the what is the actual reality of things are things that escape our grasp and that we can't perceive. So why not spirit guides? Why not entities, beings? I think people get confused or reactive when they hear certain words that they associate to certain lingos and cultures and ways of esoteric new agey sort of ways of speaking about it. So angels and spirit guides, some people are immediately going to shut off. So let's just use a more generic term, which is just beings of a different nature that aren't 3-dimensional beings. Why
And
should
yet
that
have
not?
intelligence, right?
Yes, because they have consciousness. They are pure awareness. Yes, they are part of the fabric of awareness. Yes.
Do you believe in evil or evil spirits determined to misguide us?
Again, I don't think I believe in evil spirits. I think that the words we're using are making this binary in a way, or categorical. I believe in energy forces. I believe in there is this. We all speak of this rise of collective consciousness, but with it, we can see an incredible influx of hatred, anger, violence, manifested at the same time. When you look at the state of things nowadays, it's fairly clear that the collapse is there. We're not on the brink of it. It's happening, and this is happening for one very simple reason. This is just the expression of ignorance. And when I mean ignorance, I don't mean intellectual or philosophical ignorance. I mean, the to not know who we truly are, to believe in an illusion, to believe in the idea of the self, the idea of the self that leads to the idea of separation, that I am this and therefore I'm not that, I am me and I'm against you because you and me, we have different beliefs, and so we're enemies. To the condensation of the self, the belief of the illusion of the self is what is causing all of this. When you believe in a self, you believe in a country, you believe in an idea, you believe in a social status, you believe in a certain amount of power, in money, in job that makes you better or not better than anybody. So it's the story of the self that people believe in, and they believe that to be the truth of who they are, and that they believe that this is the reality they live and experience, and from that is caused an incredible amount of fear and suffering because of this, the belief of separation. And fear is just, sorry, go ahead.
No, fear is just what?
Fear is just, again, we're using words. Language is going to fail us inevitably because again, language separates. Tall only exists because short exists, and narrow only exists because large exists, or black and white. We create oppositions through words because we categorize, we label, because we have to. That's what we found to understand and experiment reality. And so we say fear, but fear is just the same way that darkness doesn't exist. Darkness is a word that means nothing. Darkness is just the absence of light. There's light and there's no light. Show me darkness. No, you can just show me the sun disappearing, ebbing and flowing and setting below the surface of the horizon. There's light and there's no light. And for the no light part, we created a word and we called it darkness. And so it's the same with fear. Fear is just no love. There's love and there's no love. And the no love, we turned it into fear. But that's what we're made of. That's the fabric of who we are. It's love. It's pure love, because pure love is consciousness. And so there's love and there's the absence of it. And the absence of it we made into a word, and that word has governed much of our understanding, behavioral patterns, and experiences of reality.
You discussed this before with me. I asked you, how would you feel if, I mean, do you think humanity has a future in 200 years? And do you remember what you said?
Yes. We
Do
spoke
you want to, yeah.
Yes, I think it was under the scope of climate crisis and what's happening in the collapse of essentially our civilization on that specific level. Well, first of all, I don't know about 200 years. Let's be clear. I'm not a scientist.
I'm not sure either. I just made that
Yeah.
up.
That's fine. I think when we ask the question, is Earth going to make it in 200 years or 500, or doesn't matter the time, we say, are we going to make it? Is Homo sapiens, are human beings, going to survive? And so we watch the climate crisis through a very narrow filter, which is that of human beings being the protagonists of the show, being at the center of, yes, we'll make it, or no, we won't. Do you want
Sorry,
to?
the bell is ringing. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm just going to pause and I'll go fetch this package and I'll be right back. All right, where were we? About the future of humanity, whether it be climate crisis to the earth or whether it be nuclear holocaust too, or whatever it is, another catastrophic virus, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, where the obvious and evident intrinsic motivation of our collective network of beings is to make human beings survive. That's what it wants. It wants to survive on Earth. So it wants the Earth to survive and thrive as well, but it's about the survival of us, of humanity. And so the way of looking at it is through the perspective of human beings being the star of the show, being the protagonist. Will we survive? Will we still be the star of the show in 200 years? I am in no place to say yes or no to this question, because I am not by any means, well versed enough on the topic, and I don't know. I don't know if we will or if we won't. But what I know is that, in my probably very unpopular opinion, to a great extent, it doesn't matter, because we, Homo sapiens, are not the finished product. We're not it. And so what we spoke again about last time, you and I, is that there is a very clear difference to be made between, will life keep on creating life to observe itself, or will human beings survive? The latter, I don't know. Probably not. Let's be frank. We're not the finished product. We probably won't survive. But life will keep on living. Life will keep on creating. If there's one thing we're certain of from the Big Bang to now, is that there's one thing life does fantastically and in abundance, is creating more life. That's all it does. From a universe and forever expansion to galaxies to planets to I don't know how many species of life being manifested first under the oceans and then onto Earth, and the dinosaurs and us and the Homo erectus, Neanderthals, sapiens, and that's you can only go outside and look at nature. That's all it does. Life is here to create. So if life keeps on creating, which it will, under a different set of parameters than Homo sapiens, if the consciousness and the intelligence that inhabits life will be manifested in a different and new way that will not result in human beings being the stars of the show, then that's life just creating more life. We weren't the stars of the show until 300,000 years ago. It's not that long. And there was already different mass extinctions. Eckhart Tolle speaks about this in one of his talks, I believe, and mentions the second one, where bacteria got killed by a poisonous thing in the air called oxygen. Right? And then the intelligence that inhabits life used that experience and transcended that experience into different level of collective consciousness to create a different type of life that adapts to the oxygen. That's what it does. Life creates life. Better, newer, more evolved. That's what it does. It's just the constant evolution of what life is going to put forth on a material level. We are, look at how we made decisions. We are not the final product. How can we be? We have brought ourselves here in this situation on the brink of climate collapse, made decisions out of fear, ego, scarcity, when we are surrounded by abundance. We cannot surely be the finished product. We have lost touch with the essential nature of who we are. This pure awareness that reminds us that we are all one and all connected and not in fact separate. We can only look at what happens in one atom to understand that we are only energy, and that the matter is nothing. It's infinitesimal in regards to our relationship with ourselves and other people. We can't be the final product. I mean, I certainly hope we're not. But we have a duty while we're here to find ways of reconnecting to that truth and raise the level of collective consciousness and collective awareness, and to move as closely as possible to the truth of who we are.
So I ask you, what happened to your ego?
Oh. um, it's definitely still there. And because I can hear the voices, that's the big difference. The big difference is that I used to believe I was my thoughts. And then something happened, and I've now experienced a shift in consciousness that is just um, potent enough for me to realize that I am the steady, permanent I. Who am I? I'm not the 70,000 thoughts we think every day that are fleeting moments of perception in the brain and disappear like clouds in the sky. I'm not the emotions that come with them. I'm not the body constantly changing and evolving. I'm the steady observer. I'm the awareness behind all of it. And so I just don't relate to anything the voice in my head says anymore. Some days it says very little. Um, and these days are wonderful. And these days I can just go hours without thinking, which is pure bliss. And some days it's going to kick and scream a bit more because it's going to try and come back into the foreground. And when that happens, I just I mean, I smile frankly because it's so insane and ridiculous when you can hear it, the monologue or sometimes dialogue that goes on in your head, and you're the thing observing it. It's like you're watching a stage performance with one actor speaking to itself. Oh, I was really bad. Yeah, no, I was really terrible. Oh, should I do it again? No, I think you should give up. But I really no, but you're not good enough. And you're seeing this sort of like schizophrenic conversation with the self, and you're just the audience going there and thinking, oh, well, okay, that's what it is, but I'm not that, this is just happening. These are manifestations, but it's not my true nature.
Do these manifestations ever get so troubling that they distract you from your true nature?
No.
How did that come to be?
Do you
How
mean
did
how?
it come to be that no matter how hard and strong the mind is kicking and screaming for your attention, for your involvement, even for your judgment, how can you resist the impulse to get drawn into it like most of us are?
Let's take the example of a child who wants a lollipop, and you're not the child, you're the adult, saying to the child, no, it's 10 a.m. and you've just brushed your teeth, you will not get the lollipop. And the child kicks and screams and kicks and screams and cries and even calls you names and smashes the door and I don't know, does whatever it wants to do to get your attention. Are you going to give the lollipop to the child? And are you going to get as upset as the child is about the child not having the lollipop?
No, I mean, I think a lot of parents probably harden their hearts to that display.
Yes, but they know what's best,
Yeah.
because they know that if they give the lollipop to the child this one time, then it's going to ask for another one again and again and again because it knows its work. It's found the circuitry. And so when you know that you're not the child and that you don't need the lollipop, meaning you're not the mind, you don't need to think. You don't have the compulsion to think anymore because you have finally encountered who you are beyond thinking. When you create enough space to see that this need and this, what is an addiction? It's simply something that we cannot help ourselves from doing. We are addicted to thinking. if we ask most people, close your eyes and focus on the area below your nostrils right here, and just breathe and think of nothing, they will probably last 3 seconds. Not because there's anything wrong with them in particular, it's just the state of how we have let our relationship to our mind become. And so when you move beyond that understanding, when you see things for what they truly are, that you're not the child and that you don't need the lollipop, but that you are the adult observing the scene, knowing what's best and knowing who you are, then this doesn't really matter anymore. It has no, there's no weight. It just becomes things that are going to pass. And is it uncomfortable? Yes, it's not nice, but it's not true. And that's the real shift. The shift is moving from, oh, I think it, therefore it is the truth, to, no, I'm thinking it, it's just a thought. We are so convinced that our thoughts are the truth, when they're not the truth, they are just thoughts. And so when you experience in a visceral way enough that shift, you see the madness of it. And then it has no impact on you anymore. It has no effect. It's not real. It's an illusion.
The mind can be a source of madness, but it can also be a source of great creativity and innovation. So, how come, and you liken the mind to a child, an entity that's quite immature and demanding of attention? Is it our responsibility to parent our minds?
It's our responsibility to observe it. There's no, we're not going to change the way the mind is. The mind is this way. It is this way because it's been wired this way. The mind functions on a very simple structure, which is time. The mind exists only because the illusion of time exists. So the mind works, if there was no human on the planet and just birds and snakes and other creatures and flowers, do you think a bird would stop another bird and say, excuse me, what time is it? No, it wouldn't. It doesn't matter. The other bird would say, well, it's now. you know we have made up time. And so the mind exists on a fundamental basis of the axis of time, past and future and present, but the mind cares very little about the present because it can't control it, it can't change it, can't do anything about it. The mind exists and its survival is ensured by the existence of time. So it jumps back to the past and goes to the future, back to the past and jumps to the future, back to the past and jumps to the future. And its job is to strengthen the sense of self upon which it feeds itself. So our job is not, that is just how it is. There is no changing it. There's no, I mean, maybe evolution will play a role in there, certainly, but the point is not to change the mind. The point is to detach yourself from it, to realize there is a different layer behind the curtains on the stage. There's a backdrop, there's the background, backstage area where something else is happening that is infinitely more true. And so we don't have a job, but the purpose is to get in touch with that reality, and to understand that there is something that is observing the mind whilst it is constantly doing its thing of referring to the past and the future, past and future, past and future. There is something that is constantly observing the mind, that is steady in its permanence, whilst everything else around it is changing constantly. It always is. And so when you speak of the mind as a source of creativity, I would rather say or introduce the idea that the mind isn't creative. Consciousness is. There's a reason why all artists speak of this state of flow, where downloads of information and ideas come to them without them having to think about it. They're just in a flow, they're just doing, they're pure vessel forwarding information into a 3D way and creating from that stream of knowingness. That's not the mind. That's awareness within, that's consciousness. They're being used by this energy force and this intelligence as a vessel to put things forth into the world through dimensionally, but it is not through the mind. The mind can be an incredible tool of you know, if we are not its servant, if we remain its master, of just sitting down, analyzing, going about things, great, planning, exchanging with people, fantastic. But it's in the scope of how much we use our mind. This is very little. the the real creativity you mentioned is not used through mind.
All right.
I hope that makes sense, or if I'm
No, you speak brilliantly. You
if
speak
I'm,
clearly.
okay, if I'm not making sense, please let me know.
Okay. Do you still enjoy good food?
Yes.
Do you crave it sometimes?
No, I wouldn't say I crave. I used to, for instance, I could have craved like a vegan burger, you know, something like that. I don't crave anymore. I just rather um yeah, there's just something incredibly meaningful about putting healthy food in your mouth in the right amount, and being the act of being conscious when eating, and having this connection with the self and nature around it. But I don't crave, no.
Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book about mindful eating. I think he called it Savor. And
Oh,
yeah, and he recommended chewing your food
100 times, yeah.
lots, yes, a long time and turning it into this paste.
Mm.
Do you subscribe to this?
um yes, maybe not 100 times, but yes, of course. I mean, in his book, The Miracle of Mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh uses another example, which I love because it's so mundane and so it's kind of perfect. It's doing the dishes. And so he says there are two ways of doing the dishes. One way is to do the dishes to be done with the dishes, and another way is to do the dishes to do the dishes, to experience what it feels like to have water trickle down your hands, and the smell of soap, and the temperature of water changing, and the scratching, and the diligence and the applied um, presence used in the moment of just doing the dishes, doing it for the sake of it, not a means to an end, but you have arrived, you're doing the dishes. And so it's the same thing with everything. Food especially. Food is there's a survivalist compulsion to eating. So food is a very wonderful way of measuring how we can consciously apply presence in that process. Yeah.
I've heard Thich Nhat Hanh recommend that when we're doing the dishes, pretend we're washing baby Buddha or washing baby Jesus, with soap and water and it becomes such um, a mystical, magical experience and full of love.
I mean,
Oh,
everything is, but yes, yes.
okay.
Everything can, yeah.
Do you have any vices, any addictions today?
No,
Not at all.
no.
Oh, hmm. Okay. Um, is it possible to be addicted to source or isness?
No. That means being addicted to yourself, and also something you can't stop from happening despite you thinking you have any control. No, it's it's not a thing, I
So
think.
we can be addicted to our minds because that's not our true nature. But you can't be addicted to your true nature because it is. It's just your true nature.
I mean, your true nature is not the result of a compulsion.
Mhm.
That your true nature is addiction is um, in his teachings of the Vipassana, Goenka, who refers to the Buddha, but let's say Goenka speaks a lot about addiction as and I'm not saying anything new here. If someone is addicted to drinking, this person is not addicted to the drink. This person is addicted to the sensation in their body that the drink will create. So there's a level of compulsion in the act to satisfy that sensation. But again, what is that sensation? What if we go to the depth of the truth of that sensation comes from suffering and from wanting to alleviate their pain and their suffering by creating pleasure from desire. So when suffering disappears, how could there be any addiction?
I've heard tell of pure consciousness being like bliss, and I would imagine bliss is quite addictive for those who are suffering, right? So if we have I mean, do you exist in how much bliss do you experience on a daily basis?
I, first of all, do not in the slightest consider myself enlightened, or however people want to. I don't. So I don't know how much bliss the Buddha felt. I'm guessing a lot, but what I would say about that is that I experience um, wordless amount of peace, which I believe peace is probably calmer than bliss. But I don't think you can be addicted to your true nature. I think you're addicted to something that covers up your true nature with something else. But if we go back to this idea of addiction, to discover that bliss within, to discover that peace within, however you want to call it, doesn't matter the label, you encounter your true nature. Everything else falls away. Every desire, every need for pleasure, for layering, compensation, for accumulation, all of this just falls away. You're just left with your true essence, your true nature. The compulsion of addiction falls away as well. You're left with pure isness. There is nothing to do, no one to be, nowhere to go, nothing to think. That you're just pure isness. Nothing can be added after the I am. You're just this pure oneness within. So the label of addiction is just something else that will fall away. That is just a behavioral pattern that doesn't belong to that state of consciousness anymore. Then there are other things which, in my opinion, is not, since we're talking about enlightenment in a very Buddhist sense, that is not enlightenment and enlightened pattern. And that would be, for instance, I almost did one I never did, but for instance, people going on ayahuasca retreats and taking psilocybin mushrooms and doing all these things to have these transcendental experiences. Can one be addicted to that? Maybe, most certainly, I'm guessing. But that is not the revelation of your true nature. That is using a third party to access something that resembles it, but that is not the realization of self.
Okay. Animals, like you mentioned before, they live in the present. Do you share space with animals like you never have before?
Um, it's going to sound it's okay. I Um, I am in contemplative awe of birds. I just spent about 3 hours today looking at birds. Um, there's something in the physicality of a bird, and the there's nothing that moves me more than a flock of birds just taking off at the same time and going, going left and making a wave in the sky at the same, and having, it's such a clear imagery for collective consciousness. There is no leader, there is no top-down phenomenon where one of the birds are going to say, guys, now rise, let's go. It's a collective choice, it's a collective uplift that happens at the same time. And you see this thing, this force, this intelligence displayed through multiple bodies of existence, just swerving through the skies. And it's the thing that humbles me the most, and I find just completely, I feel like I'm witnessing a miracle when I see this. So birds are something of a very unique just pattern of behavior that I find fascinating.
Any other animals?
um I just, well, I love my dog. um I love watching her sleep. I think it's watching again, watching an animal sleep, and to know that there's such a complete wipe out reset. They're not thinking about it. I mean, they're dreaming, of course, but there's no, I'm sleeping, but tomorrow I have a meeting. It's happening at 9 a.m. So if I sleep now, I'm going to get 7 hours of sleep. Okay, so that's good. So I'm going to turn around and think about what's going to, they're just there. And there's something in the recognition of self where, you watch a dog sleep and you think, oh, its torso, thorax is rising up and down, up and down. And what is this thing? It's breathing. And why do you recognize breathing? Because you experience it. And so there's a mirroring of self in the smallest things. We recognize what we experience. And so it's, yeah, I'm not making any sense, am I? But anyway.
No, I have a dog as well, and I like watching him sleep. And but the interesting thing, something interesting between me and him, when I put my ear to his belly, right on his belly, and I hear his heartbeat, it, and I put all my attention on his heartbeat. He starts to struggle. He doesn't like it when I do that.
Oh,
What's happening there? Is there something on another level happening between my awareness and his heartbeat that he finds disruptive?
I think dogs like their personal space when they're resting. I might suggest that it's probably a bit more boring as an explanation. I certainly know that my dog would not like me to come in and, lay my head on her when she's resting, meaning fully surrendered, you know, fight or flight, rest and reset. She's fully in the rest and reset mode. All the weapons are down. And so there's a real vulnerability there as well. So, it's their space.
And if you make a clap or a loud noise from deep sleep, does your dog just wake up very alert?
It depends. It depends. Some things can be very loud, but she's going to recognize. If, for instance, if I say something very loudly, she might not wake up because she's going to recognize my voice, and so it won't impose a threat on her. But if someone, for instance, drops something and it makes a bang, yeah, most likely, I guess she'll wake up. Yeah.
And the doorbell?
Oh yes, yes,
Does she bark when the doorbell rings?
yes. She's very territorial. Yeah,
Oh, is that what it's about?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Let's see what else I got for you. Do you still feel emotional pain?
Um, suffering from my emotions, you mean?
I think so, yes.
Um, Well, no, I mean, I also haven't had anything, touch wood, major happen. So I don't know if something terrible was to happen, I wouldn't be able to answer that. But if for me, it's the same. It's like thoughts, right? It's the same thing. Emotions happen in the body, thoughts happen in the mind, but they are of a similar nature in which they are fleeting, they are transient, they are in flux. And so if you learn how to observe your thoughts and exist in the state of permanent awareness, then you also learn to observe your emotions the same way that you learn to observe your physical sensations. An itch is not an itch forever. An itch is an itch for a few seconds, at worst, a few minutes. Um, so it's the non-reactionary mode of observation that allows you to be the witness of these things constantly fleeting. If you're sad and you don't react to the sadness, meaning you don't apply a mental commentary on the sadness. I'm sad because this always happens to me, and I'm a terrible person, and this should not have happened, and it's not fair, and I hate my life. The mental commentary is what's going to amplify the emotion of sadness. If you just observe the sadness as physical structure and a physical component of the body, you will witness it flow, rise, steady, disappear. What brings us suffering is the mental commentary attached to the experience of emotion.
It took you a long time to be able to observe your thinking, right? Without getting involved. You said there was a switch in you.
Yes, I was
Eh,
about to say I'm 30, so I guess it took me 30 years, but
all right.
no, I mean, yes, something happened recently which shifted everything, and so that I guess was an accelerator. Um, and without that experience, I would probably still be struggling immensely in terms of understanding what I'm saying conceptually on an intellectual level, but how to apply it would be way harder, of course. Of
And
course.
it was a painful experience during a retreat, right?
I mean, yes,
Well, your back was
it was,
hurting, killing you,
yes, I
and
mean, and
you
painful
were
mentally
in
as well. Yeah.
meditation, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it was incredibly painful, um, mentally and physically, and challenging, and also just pure um, bliss and peace. It was one led to the other.
Okay. So and you once mentioned to me something about the link between pain and awakening.
Um, well, I'm not. I remember what you're referring to, and I think what's really interesting is, um, I was actually referring to this study, and I don't know. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I find it quite interesting, especially in the literature when you look at it. Um, there are a lot of sort of um, at least scientific conversations in the field, without getting into too much, you know, scientific talk about this, but there is essentially, if it was to be summarized, apparently some people believe that there is a buildup of energy in the right amygdala that creates the right amygdala is the non-verbal language. So it's thinking in silence, and it's also the place where um, and it creates relaxation, and it's also a place where anxiety, dread, impending doom, fear exist. And so there's a buildup of energy in the right amygdala that apparently gets transferred to the left amygdala, where pain, fear, anxiety, doom is transferred to bliss, ecstasy, peace. Um, And so without getting into too much detail, what's interesting is that the few talks that I've seen about that do mention, you know, the history of, for instance, the Buddha and how he got enlightened. And the night before his enlightenment, he got enlightened at the early hours of the morning. But the night before, who visited him? Mara, you know, the devil. And Mara sent his daughters. I don't remember the names, but, you know, things such as like ambition, greed, all these things. And so he was tempted by the devil, and that made the process increasingly painful. There was this influx of anxiety and pain, because he was essentially being tested to his limit to see how far he could go without surrendering to Mara. And then you take Jesus, you know, spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, and there is this moment where he talks of the devil as well, essentially visiting him right before his enlightenment. I don't know if that is the term in Christianity. I'm not quite versed in that regard, but so there seems to be a commonality. You look at stories of modern awakening, such as Eckhart Tolle, incredible states of dread and anxiety at night, awoken in the early hours of the morning, and feeling complete pain, fear, desolation, not being able to live with himself anymore. And then he uttered the words, "I can't live with myself." And the thought of that phrase stopped him, because, well, who is the I that cannot live with the self? Am I one or am I two? Am I the I or am I the self that I cannot live with? And that thought seemed to stop him in his tracks, and you know, stopped him in the sort of momentum of pain. And he looked at the thought and said something along the lines of, well, maybe just one of them is real, then maybe the other is an illusion. And then bam, it happened. And so again, incredible amount of negativity somehow alchemized into this blissful moment that transforms into a state. Yes.
How do you deal with physical pain?
Well, again, I haven't had, touch wood, something I've not broken a leg or anything like this since experienced this shift, so I don't know how we deal with it. But I was a ballet dancer and so I am quite versed in the domain of physical pain. And I think I do have a high tolerance threshold in that regard, because pain was very much the transaction of artistry and creative expression. One came hand in hand with the other. So welcoming physical pain is something that, you know, if I had to rank it, which seems incredibly silly, between like mental pain, emotional pain, and physical pain would probably not be the hardest thing, just because of where I come from. But it's the same. You observe it. You observe the sensation, and you observe that the slow transition within the cycle of pain, because it changes all the time, and it obviously depends on which pain, of course.
Okay.
I hope I'm again making
No,
sense.
no, you're making sense. I just I don't want the viewer to have a sudden bright, remarkable shift in energy. I want to keep it as it is, if possible. Emotions are energy and energies in motion. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yes, I agree with that. Of course, yeah.
So if emotions, how do emotions get trapped in the body? That can be quite painful, right?
I mean, I'm not, again, I'm not a specialist in that domain, so please take what I say with a grain of salt. But I don't think emotions get, I mean, emotions exist in the body. That's where they exist. They exist in the body. They don't exist anywhere else. When you feel an emotion, it is somewhere in the body. There is, it seems, a bit of understanding in terms of emotions have a cycle. So emotions have, you know, a beginning, a middle, and an end. I remember years ago listening to, I'll have to find it again, but it was quite a fascinating talk. I think it was Brene Brown who was interviewing an emotion specialist, essentially, who was talking about how emotions do have specific cycles, and the emotions being trapped in the body is because we don't surrender to the cycle. We want it to stop until we contract, and we don't let the emotion run its course. Essentially, we're, in another word, we are not, we don't manage to be into rest as the status of observer, who just witnesses the emotion pass through all the cycles. We contract and therefore hold on to it because we want it to stop. And we identify with it. It's the same thing, isn't it? The same way that we identify with thoughts, we identify with emotions. If you're sad for a long time, you call yourself depressed, which is normal and it makes sense. But then these emotions become part of the identity we carry with us. And that process of identification with form and manifestation, such as emotions, becomes it makes it really hard to let go of them, because then it means that your ego lets go of a part of itself, lets go of a part of its identity that is made up. And I know for a fact I was clinically depressed for my entire adult life, on antidepressants, I mean, you name it. And so I had a really hard time letting go of the idea of being sad, of being a depressed person.
I'll be right back. It's very inopportune when they deliver packages in the middle of talking about such a sensitive subject. And I guess, the world can be insensitive. But you were saying that you experienced depression and
Yeah, and I had become a depressed person. That was who I was. I knew myself as Emeline is clinically depressed, OCD ridden, full of PTSD. This is who I am. And it sucks and it's terrible, but it's who I am. And there's a real conflict and paradox in them. And please take what I say with your own experience in mind, because we all try to get out of pain to the best of our ability all the time, constantly. That's all we seek, the end of suffering. And yet, the one thing that the mind hates more than anything else is change. The mind doesn't like to change. It's very hard to change opinions, to change judgments, to change beliefs. That the mind is hooked on a series of an architecture within that just makes up the palace of who you are. And so when you've been depressed for 10 years, you are a depressed person. And it's really, really hard to let go of that structural identity. And so paradoxically, pain becomes this very strange comfort zone. And maybe it was just my experience and it was nobody else's. But in my experience, I wanted so badly to get out of it. And yet I was so attached to the idea of being that depressed self, because I knew that. And I would rather cling to the painful known than to a potential free unknown. The unknown part was too scary, the surrendering part, the letting go. And so it took me a long time, and clearly I needed a big experiential shift to get out of it, because I don't know if I would have been able to manually on my own make it happen. Some people do, and they're my heroes. I don't know if I could have. And again, everyone has different experiences, but in my experience, there was a real identity break when I allowed myself to not be the unhappy, depressed person anymore.
How did your friends manually overcome depression?
When I manually is probably not. I think you know what I mean when I
Do
say
you
that.
mean like training their minds?
Yeah, slow and steady,
Training the mind that even though this mind there requires some kind of a mind identity if the mind is worth training in order to heal, right? I mean, and the mind, yet the mind is not us essentially, and so
Yes, but your mind has an identity, because if I ask you, who is Dan Frey, you're going to tell me Dan Frey is American. Dan Frey is, I believe, Caucasian. Dan Frey lives in New York. Dan Frey is pro Knicks, Yankees. I don't know. I'm not at all versed in these things. Dan Frey likes pizza and not pasta. Dan Frey believes in this and not that. Dan Frey dislikes this and really likes that. This is the mind identity. And you believe that you are these series of thoughts and beliefs. You believe that Dan is this American Knicks fan who likes pizza. His favorite color is blue, and he lives in New York, and that is who you are. And
oh
so,
my
some,
God, you know
yeah,
me better than anybody.
I blew your
That
cover.
was
I was,
incredible. I thought I was a private person before I met you.
I mean, I could have not gone more stereotypical, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
That is the man-made identity. And what we're suggesting is that there is something beyond, behind that system and architecture of beliefs and ideas about who you are. There is a deeper sense of I am. There is a deeper isness that doesn't have a name, that doesn't have a gender, that doesn't have a nationality, that doesn't have an age. There is a deeper I amness in the background, forever permanent, that is there constantly giving you life, and that exists on a transcendent level, and that is not Dan Frey. It just is. And this thing is observing the mind making up the architecture of Dan Frey, but this thing is and is real only in the wordless and in the silence of its true nature.
Now, you awoke to your true nature, and your friend, I know you don't like all this, the limitation of words, but let's just say that. And your friends reprogram their mind so as to overcome depression, but you did something different. Words are limited here, but whereas you didn't stress reprogramming your mind, as you know, all these self-help books, and I read a bunch of them, they're always like, oh, develop these habits and you'll reprogram your mind and you'll think happy thoughts, and you'll stop yourself whenever you have a self-critical thought, and you'll reframe it, and you do this constantly, and eventually it'll be done unconsciously and you'll be a happy person. um, that's reprogramming the mind.
Yeah, I think we misunderstood each other. When I said the people who do it manually on my heroes, I mean, I don't know of anyone who went through that. I'm just saying I'm sure there are people who went through that. I tried um, everything you said. I tried. I spent the whole of my 20s going through exactly that path of on an intellectual level, soaking in every bit of information about the self and how to change, and nothing really worked. So it seems that I needed something else to experience this shift within. But yes, I spent 10 years trying to go through all the self-help books and understand where this thing that I was feeling, this suffering within, came from. And I don't discard any of it, because it's fantastic help, and it's here for the taking. It's here to help people. But what was missing for me personally, was the lived experience. It wasn't just reading the book and, setting an alarm the next day and trying to be better about this and that. I clearly needed an extreme shift, and this is what this strange little retreat, I guess, in a way created, to be put in such extreme conditions. But yeah, no, I think we all do go through the self-help books shelves to the best of our ability. Yeah.
Okay. Do you love your parents more than you do most other people?
Do I love my parents more than I do most other people? Well, I hope they don't listen to this then. I I love them, of course I love them, but I see them, I adore my parents, and I'm incredibly lucky to have the parents I have. I could have had very close-minded parents who don't necessarily want to understand, the intrinsic workings of the mind and what happens within, but they're both so incredibly curious and kind and open to that, realm. And I would like to rephrase your question to make it maybe more relevant, just not to me, but what I see now is just two humans. They're two humans first, and they're my parents after. There's the sense of detachment of self, has also corrugated in the relationships in my life. So I see them first as humans, as extensions of the collective consciousness, just pure humans, beautiful, perfect within, without. And then it just so happens that these humans are my family, but they're first and foremost beings.
Okay. Can you sense the energy from trees?
Your questions are so funny. Yeah, I mean, I think we all can. I think if we stay in nature for long enough just to absorb the manifestations of life all around us, we sense, of course, the life force that a tree is. The same way that if you sense the life force in someone, you can sense it in anyone. It's the same life force. So this force can be experienced and witnessed and felt through any living thing. The tree is one of them.
What does it feel like when you truly witness something like a tree?
There's no difference between a tree and the true nature of who you are. It's the same thing.
Is there something you feel with the five senses or the sixth sense when you
It's just,
experience?
it's a pure recognition of, oh, this thing and I, this body, are made of the same thing. This is the same. There's a direct recognition of the true nature of the self when you interact with nature in a profound way, or a present way rather.
Do you have a favorite tree?
um I mean, we are, so I live on a farm and we're very lucky to, well, I guess actually I would have to ask because I'm fairly certain that the reason why the farm was built this way about 200 years ago was around this big oak tree. I'll send you a picture, just huge, incredible. So I would, yeah, this oak tree is wonderful over there.
Thank you.
I hope
What?
that satisfies.
Say that again?
I hope that satisfies your curiosity about
It
trees.
does. It does. What disgusts you?
Disgusts me. Nothing.
Okay. What are you afraid of?
I'm not um I don't feel a lot of fear anymore. I would say that I experience profound waves of true sadness and weeping and real profound sadness when I see what's happening in the world and other people suffering, the terrible things that are happening to human beings that are just the same, that are just part of, that are the exact same fabric than who we are. We're just one entity destroying itself. And the idea that this one thing can destroy itself is just it makes me really, really profoundly sad. But fear, um fear is tightly linked to our relationship with control and wanting or not wanting to let go. We fear most things that we can't control, that are out of our control. Um, so surrendering is a wonderful antidote to fear. There's I think it's in the Tao. I think it's in the Book of Tao, but I'm not quite sure. But I think there's a passage where Lao Tzu writes something along the lines of, you know, life is falling. You're just falling, constantly falling, and you can fall and hold on to the tree that is falling next to you, or the stone that is falling next to you, or the person that is falling next to you, to give you an illusion that you're falling less because you're holding on to something, or you can fall and enjoy the sunset. But there is a nature of yeah, lack of control and surrendering and letting go that goes against fear, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's interesting. Our tiny little planet in a vast galaxy is also falling and float and turning and being thrown around in the universe. And so, I mean, essentially we are one with this planet, and we're also, I don't know, we're loose in a giant in a lot of empty space. And so essentially the Tao is just, it's amazing how ahead of its time it was to understand that what science caught up to thousands of years later. Um, let's go back to a little bit to the profound sadness you feel at the self-destructive nature of humanity. You volunteer for City Voices, and I bring people into your life who also manifest this self-destructiveness. When you encounter individuals, um, hold on, I think my girlfriend is calling. I'll be right back, okay? That was my girlfriend, and she said she called because she felt like crying because she's going to fly soon, and she has a dreadful fear of flying.
Mm.
And then all her other responsibilities compounded, weighing on top of her, and she's feeling overwhelmed, and so she needs that release.
Do you need to call her?
uh, I asked her, when can I call you when you'll have space to spend some time, and she said 2 o'clock, so that's all right. It's only 12:30 now, so
Okay.
and it's interesting. We were just talking about these very subjects. So I brought up when folks come to you for guidance and a friendly ear, a friendly word, and they lay it on you, like their their experiences, which can be interpreted as like, wow, why are they destroying themselves in this way? Why are they, suicidal? Why are they harming themselves? Why are they thinking that way? Why are they thinking so negatively in order to destroy their happiness? Um, or so does that make you sad as well when you see it on an individual microscopic level?
Of course, of course. And to see that the there's such a universal element and quality to individual suffering. Um, but you don't know what you don't know, right? So you cannot know what you cannot know. And so if you think this is the only way, and if you believe in the illusion of the self, in this duality that life has created for us through the experience of separation, then you won't see any way out. Of course you won't. And then you will look for all the answers in all the wrong places outside of yourself, in perceptions, objects, experiences, people. You will look for all of it outside when actually it's all within. But how can you know that if you don't know it? Until you discover it isn't real. And then there's another added layer of there's a divine timing to these things, I believe. Not everyone is ready for the shift at the same time. So someone might give another person all of the ingredients to make the best meal ever, and they just won't believe that these ingredients are going to make that meal. They just won't buy it. So all you can do is all I try to do, also because I frankly don't pretend to be anyone who's a specialist in anything, really. Far from that. I just try to hold space, to actively carve a space, a vastness, a spaciousness of presence, um, that I try to exist in, for these people to maybe recognize something. We spoke about, I watch my dog breathe, and I recognize this up and down movement as breathing. Why do I recognize it? Because I experience it myself. We recognize what we experience. So if I or anybody else can hold a space of stillness and presence, and within that space of stillness and presence, these people, without necessarily putting words and labels and concept on it, on the experience itself, but if someone can go, oh, this feels nice, and this feels familiar, and this feels like calm, and this feels like peace, what this person has. I want that. If they can say, I want that, this feels like peace, if they recognize that thing within someone else, it's because they have it too already. That's the opening, that's the crack in the wall. And then the process of exploration within starts. But I think just holding space, holding a vastness of presence and stillness is um is the container for that level of truth. And then everyone, you know, is different, of course, but it starts with this silent stillness.
Okay. Um, do you believe that we harbor in our souls a collection of all of our ancestors and past incarnations?
Again, I would try to phrase it differently so that everyone can identify with it. So to not use the words ancestors and reincarnation and all these things. If we start with the premise that we are pure, pure consciousness, and then this pure consciousness is the shortest while being materialized into an event, into a body that we call a human, a person. And then when this body dies, we go back to the state of pure consciousness, the way waves go back to being the ocean after having been a wave for the shortest time. These are just sporadic manifestations of the whole of this isness. Then again, we're everything, we're everyone, because there is no self. There's just the illusion of self. There is no self in a very Buddhist way. The self is the illusion. So we're not the wave, we are the ocean, taking the shape, taking the disguise for the shortest while into a wave. We're not the ray of the sun. We are the sun manifested as ray. There couldn't be any ray without sun. So the sun is just sending out rays across the world, but it comes from the same place.
All right. What would a partnership or marriage look like for you?
Oh. uh, I don't know. I am choosing lonesomeness for now, and it's been a choice that has been quite steady for a while. I tried relationships in the past. It never really worked. I felt like I was playing a part. Like I was playing the part of the girlfriend. It never felt like I was actually recognizing the truest form of self in myself and the other in that partnership. And that brings a very interesting, because I mean, it's not very interesting to talk about me in that regard, but love in general, what love is, what aligned, present, still, spiritual, awakened love could potentially be. I would suggest that it looks something very different from what we imagine romantic relationships to be nowadays. There's a big difference between wanting the best for someone and just wanting someone. Love is not possessive. Passion can be. So this just brings up a whole different conversation on romantic love and internal spiritual growth. But for me, yes, I'm happily on my own, I guess.
What qualities would someone have to have in order to even be remotely considered for a relationship with you?
I'm not up. Are people going to see this video or is it just for you? I'm confused.
No.
If other people are going to see this video, I doubt it's going to be very interesting to them. If this ever is watched by anyone, I wonder.
Well, realistically, it's not going to be watched by a lot of people, but
Okay, good.
but
Good.
feel free to skip any questions.
I mean, no, I just think I would it would only make sense for me to share my time. I mean, that means nothing. It would only make sense to share and hold space for someone else if they are exploring the depth of their own stillness within as well, and if that is a priority to them. If not, I think it might be very complicated for them to understand me, simply because I frankly am so incredibly boring. I mean, I can sit on a chair for a few hours and be content and not speak to anyone for a few days. So it would, I think they wouldn't really understand. So yeah, I think a similar curiosity and all of those things. Yeah.
What if you were sitting and doing your sitting in isness in your chair, and there was another chair adjacent, and he or she or they were sitting in their isness for several hours, but you felt the exchange of this wonderful energy. Would that be something to consider?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because then it's just an expansion of the isness, isn't it? If we looked at it this way.
Yeah, like it would be like a two-person retreat.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you answered this question about physical discomfort because the question is like if the temperature is too cold or too hot, how would you, I have only two more questions. So that is if it's too cold or too hot, like how do you handle this?
um, I mean, I would accept it. it it wouldn't be my personal preference, but I would accept the state of things, knowing that they would change.
Imagine yourself on a wintry day with cold rain coming down on you, and you're holding out your beggar's cup on the street, and you're in clothes that are just getting cold and wet. Um, but yet you would be someone without negative thinking about this situation.
I mean, let's look at it this way. If there was no way for me to go to a shelter, to ask for food, to be taken care of, to go hide under a bus stop or somewhere for a little while so that my clothes could get wet. If we're existing in a scenario where there's nothing to be done and you can only sit there for 3 hours, and you have the choice between sitting there for 3 hours, knowing that cannot be changed, um, whilst commenting on the misery of the moment, or just sitting there for 3 hours and just sitting there for 3 hours, what would you choose?
Oh, I would just sit there for 3 hours, and because the commenting would just compound the misery.
There we go. So you answered your own question.
Fine.
I'm not a teacher trying to trick you, but I think it's important for you to, you know, yeah, it's we're all the same if we understand the tools of, anyway.
Okay. How would you handle if a medication you had to take was blunting your emotions, and that if you didn't take it, something terrible would happen?
That did happen to me. Um,
How would you handle that today?
oh, today. Again, I'm not a medical professional, so I don't think what I'm saying is just from intuition, but it has no tangible scientific validity, right? Um, just saying that for the maybe 2.5 people who might watch this video one day, if no one, which I would much prefer if no one ever watches this. Sorry, Dan, it's not good for you, but for me, it's anyway. I think obviously the tricky things about these medications are that the quality of your consciousness or of your awareness essentially is, or at least the perception of it is, that it is disturbed and it is not of the same quality, because you're not in physical capacity to rise above thinking, to be present, to have this sort of spacious detachment with your own state of thoughts, because you are under the influence of a chemical. So it's a very different experience to behold, because you are the witness of something happening to you on a physiological level that you cannot control. If nothing can be done in terms of obviously changing the dosage and things that work this way, again, it is the process of surrendering to the impermanence of the state, because the body eventually regulates. And if it doesn't, obviously your psychiatrist changes the medication, but the body regulates, the body adapts. And so what felt, because consciousness is untouched essentially, but the perception of it is different and the experience of it is distorted. So what once felt like a distorted state of consciousness, and the incapacity to go beyond that distortion, will eventually settle into a new norm, and you will eventually regain this sort of feeling of integration of the self fully. But that takes time. So again, that the gist is just about accepting the transience of that state for what it is, the body going through a chemical change and adapting to it, and being finding ways, very practical, very mundane ways of reconnecting to that stillness within, without intellectualizing the fear and the confusion that this distorted state of consciousness causes. So, we go back to Thich Nhat Hanh, what he advises them, the celebration of these small instances. So when you wash the dishes, you only wash the dishes, and see how your mind adapts to this very impersonal, universal, simplified process of just washing the dishes. Are you capable for a few seconds of just being in a relationship with a sponge and doing nothing else and just existing at that level of mindfulness? Are you able to just chop a carrot when you're chopping the carrot, and allow your mind to find crevices through the wall of the thick misty wall of confusion that these medications create, to anchor yourself into the mundanity of certain moments throughout life? Gardening, you're gardening, you're pulling out a weed, you're pulling out a weed one at a time. You're breathing in, you're breathing in. So I think it's really about just reconnecting to the body, to the physicality, the physical experience of self in the body, so that it gives you an anchor point to understand reality on a physical level. If this is disturbed, then this has to become the anchor again. So the physical acts of interacting with reality in the most mundane ways would be maybe a way of exploring that. I don't know if that answers your question.
It's a good answer, because I've never heard an answer like that. So I have another question for you, and that is, many people experience, what is that disease? They call it a disease, dementia, or Alzheimer's, toward the end of life, where they forget who they are, and they forget who they loved. And it's very painful to those that love them, probably more painful to the loved ones than it is to the person experiencing it. But the person experiencing it also suffers when they realize that there's something missing. Do you have a theory about why such a condition manifests in many people?
Oh, again, I'm not a medical professional.
No, no. Do you have a metaphysical, like a spiritual thought on that?
Enthusiast. Well, it is incredibly painful. It is incredibly painful because it is also ripped from you slowly and surely, the sense of self. it's so not your choice in such a visceral way, and you're so the victim of it that it feels like an absolutely dreadful experience. Do I have any thought on it? I mean, any thought as to why these disease manifests? No. If we have to go into the whole science part of it, it's obviously not my domain, but
Please, no science, no science.
I mean, it's just it would be quite I've never been in the presence of someone who, for instance, experiences dementia or Alzheimer's, so I can't say. And I think it's obviously a very disturbing thing for a loved one to see the person not know who they are as a person. So there's an immensely grueling dimension to the experience. And on the other hand, although there is no other hand, there is no positive aspect to it. But it's like it could weirdly be also seen as just consciousness experiencing itself in the most unfiltered way, because it's just a being being a being without knowing they're a being. But I don't think it can be applied in this case, because the experience of loss of self comes with so much pain and suffering and despair that it still veils the experience of consciousness, these negative emotions. I would be quite fascinated to actually ask someone about this in terms of the intersection of pure awareness and non-duality work with things such as dementia and Alzheimer. I think it would be quite a fascinating conversation, but I don't want to comment on it more because I don't know. I don't know.
Is there a question I need to be asking you that I haven't asked yet?
Sorry, I would add, what
Oh,
would happen if, for instance, the Buddha had dementia? With his level of integration of awareness and his level of, I mean, pure enlightenment, pure being, what would happen to someone like this with that sort of wisdom, applied wisdom, who suddenly finds themselves ridden with dementia? Would someone like the Buddha still be able to find his footing in pure awareness, or even that sense of pure awareness would be lost? You know what I mean? I don't know. But it would take probably an exceptional being to rest as awareness, um, despite the experience of dementia. I don't know. I'm rambling. I have no idea. It's a really hard question, Dan.
fascinating response.
Hardly, but
Yeah, no, 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 no. Especially the last part. I mean, imagine if the Buddha had
well,
Alzheimer's
because
or
I think
dementia.
it would only take such an exceptional, advanced spiritual teacher to potentially grapple with what it means to be this essentially altered state as well of consciousness, and how that would, the ramifications that would have on their experience of the present moment and awareness and self. I don't know. It's impossible to. I don't know. But I would love to find the answer. Maybe we can ask someone who knows.
Well, it would be experiencing those conditions minus the fear, right? In a state of love. So almost welcoming those conditions, perhaps. I can only theorize.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
My intuition is telling me no. It's more complex than that.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
just don't know to what extent.
Anything that you'd like to say as we conclude this
Oh no,
interesting conversation.
you have asked quite enough.
You
I was
know,
not prepared for this.
if I'm not going to do anything with this video unless you give 100% consent and approval.
Yeah,
And
I mean, no one's going to watch it, so it's fine.
well, I mean, there might be 100 people who watch it, or 200 people, or something like.
I doubt it, but it's fine.
It's fine. Are you sure?
If someone took anything away from this that made them feel then 1% more um in touch with something within themselves they might not recognize yet but have a feeling of, then fantastic. If not, that's okay. We all have individual experiences, and mine is just mine. But yeah, I think what we can safely say is that the glue that binds us all, that we've kept on calling consciousness and awareness throughout these, goodness, almost 2 hours, Dan, of conversation. this glue that we speak of, the fabric that we are made of is pure love. That's all there is. And so if we can find ways, altruistic ways of reconnecting to that source within, that pure love that lives within us, then maybe we're one step closer to a shift on a collective level, and we're all participating like the flock of birds. There is no leader. This is not a top-down phenomenon. This has to be of a collective, horizontal, widespread nature. It has to happen within everyone. So